Today's tutor, Morag Keister, made it through the heats of Portrait Artist of the Year with her moving depiction of author Elizabeth Day.
Morag's a really exciting young artist. I love the quality of her paint application. I like the unusual nature of the sinuous line that she gives us.
In the semi-final, her remarkable portrait of singer-songwriter Rebecca Ferguson earned her a place in the final 3.
We have a regal presence here, and there's just the sense of the person, and that's what great art is about.
And it was her commissioned portrait of fiancé Genty, followed by her painting of former Deputy Chief Medical Officer Professor Jonathan Van Tam, that saw her crowned Portrait Artist of the Year 2022.
Get in there!
It just has to be Morag. This is what portrait can be. It can really be fascinating and exciting and thrilling artwork.
For her winning commission, Morag painted actor, broadcaster and national treasure Sir Lenny Henry.
I'm too excited.
Too excited. Shall we?
For the National Portrait Gallery's permanent collection.
Wow. It's beautiful. I'm really chuffed.
Morag's intimate and expressive portraits begin with a silhouette drawing and a focus on body language and posture.
I'm just really trying to get a sense of you in the lines, kind of shape of your shoulders and your whole posture. That's where all the kind of information is for me.
This makes her the ideal person to lead today's masterclass, painting with lines.
Today we're going to be making a portrait out of lines. Body language and the posture of the person are two very important things when approaching a portrait, especially in my practice. We're going to be using a small paintbrush, or if you like, a pencil or a piece of charcoal to approach this portrait today before potentially moving in with some colour. We're working with a live model today. Very lucky to have Laurie with us. And an important thing to remember when you're working with a live model, especially a nude model, is it's a living, breathing person in front of you, and to treat them with respect and make sure that they're comfortable throughout the sitting. So I'm just using some oil paint and, like I said, a very small paintbrush for this portrait. And to get started, I will just take a good look at the sitter and kind of find a natural starting point. This can sometimes be where they are sitting on the chair or the sofa, or it could be the top of the head to make sure you keep that in the composition. But actually, often for me, it's usually something like the eyebrow that feels like an anchor to begin the piece with. So I think that's what I'm gonna do with Laurie. The first mark is really quite important, so it's good to spend a bit of time thinking about that mark. And what I often find is the most accurate and the most truthful mark that you might actually put down in the whole piece. And that's why it's a really good anchor to always return to when keeping in mind the proportion and the perspective. So once I've put that first mark down, what I usually try and do is, while I'm there and all my attention is there, I'll just spend a bit of time and energy getting in as much of the detail in this area as I can. I've just started with the eyebrow, and so I'll go along the side of the face, and then the brush will go into the hair. And I will just start to get all of those lines and strands of hair in. Apart from when my paint runs out on the brush, I actually find I don't need to take my brush off the paper too often at this stage. And I like to have the paint to run for as long as it can go. This just creates a really nice texture and variety in line density. I've pretty much always got one eye closed like that, and I squint when I'm looking at my sitter. This just really helps bring everything onto kind of one level visually, and it just simplifies what you're seeing, and it makes it easier to relay it on the paper. As we're using line today, primarily, something that you can bear in mind is a lot of the details can fall away, actually, and we can focus on just the ones that really stand out to us and feel important. And these are often the edges and the small details of things. A good way to stay in the right place is to imagine that actually you're playing a game of operation and you have to keep the line on that path. And if you think of it like that, then you can just, as you're looking at your sitter, you can take the line around and just nudge it and kind of bump it around all the little details that appear. And you'll start to realize and appreciate just how much information there is in the silhouette of a sitter. When you're doing this exercise, you'll just become really conscious of just how much information there is in the shape of a person. I really like to see how far I can take this one long line, how accurate I can keep it for the distance it travels. And then if you find that something really isn't sitting quite where you'd like it to be, then it's no problem because we're working with lines today. And the great thing about that is that you can just move over what you've already put down with more lines. And that in itself actually brings a real weight and presence to the work. And it starts to feel almost like a time-based piece. When I was painting Laurie's hand just here, it started to get a little bit confusing with the marks that I was putting down compared to all of the lines and the marks that are over there because the hand is all kind of mixed up with this fabric. And so just to emphasize that this here is the edge of the hand, I will just go over it in a slightly heavier, denser line. And that's, for me, as much as anything, just to kind of visually, immediately remember where everything is, and that really helps keep me on track. I have this mentality when I'm painting and drawing, and it's to always return to the truth of what you're looking at. And what I mean by that is when you are struggling with a certain area, like the hand, for example, it can be so complicated and different positionings and stuff. It's a real area where people struggle. But I just look at it and I see it as a collection of lines, and that really simplifies things. And that's kind of what I mean by just looking at the truth of what you're seeing. Don't think of it as a hand, just see it as a shape and use that operation method to go around the outside of that shape and fill in any details that feel important. Something that might happen when you're going through your portrait is you'll be on one area and you'll be kind of planning to focus on that. And then you might actually just get distracted and find something else more interesting kind of halfway through that action. For example, I was just painting this arm and I was getting really into the kind of flowing motion of it. And then my paintbrush got to around here, around halfway down. And I realized that all the cloth here was kind of interesting and feeling important. And about what I'd say about that is to just go with where you're being pulled and to give into those little moments that kind of drag your attention away from what you were focusing on. Because the thing is, once you've gone over the whole image and it all starts to fill in, all those lines are just going to join together, as long as you're trusting the marks that you're putting down. Okay, so at this kind of stage in the painting, it's a good time to kind of assess what you've already done and use it as an anchor to sort of map where you are or where you were and where you need to be. So just to kind of make sure everything is in proportion or it is where I'd like it to be, I'm going to go back to that first mark that I put down, which was the eyebrow here. And if I just keep focused on this point and I can just quickly scan Laurie and look back at the work that I've done. And this just really helps me see things a bit more clearly. I'm using these sort of slow, heavy, flowing lines to get in some of the details of Laurie's hair, because she's got these really nice, big kind of ringlet style curls. And they're really, the curls are kind of separated, and that makes them really nice to draw and to outline. Okay, so I've gotten to a point in the portrait where I either don't feel like any more lines are needed, or I'm feeling maybe a little bit apprehensive to approach the features in the face. And so what I'm going to do is bring in some color. And using tiny little pieces and patches of color can really stand in for the details that you were maybe afraid to put in with the lines. It's a lot more softer, it's a bit more adaptable, and you might just feel a lot of relief being able to use a material like this in comparison to this this limiting but useful tool, which is just the line. So I'm just going to take a look at Laurie and have a think about where I'd like to bring in some more detail, some detail that feels important. It's like that first line and that first mark that we made at the beginning, which was the eyebrow. In this case, the first marks you put down are so descriptive because they're in comparison to the blankness. Right now, there's a kind of blue, soft blue shadow on Laurie's shoulder, and that's what I'm going to move in with. So I'm just going to quickly mix that color. And once I've mixed that color and I feel happy that that's the color that I'm looking at, or it's close enough, what I'll do is, again, sticking with the truth of what we're seeing, I'll basically try and carve out that exact shape of the color that I'm seeing. So it's like a little patch of blue just kind of curled around the shoulder like this. So if it was like a piece that I could peel off, I'm going to kind of paint it in that way. It's not that different to working with the lines when you're approaching it in that way, you might find. You could draw the shape and then you could fill it in like this. Or you can just paint it as you go, kind of like this. So I'm just moving the brush around the painting as I look at Laurie and just almost trying to detect where these details are and being careful not to use it for the sake of it. It's really a case of when you find that color, put it in there. When you are moving in with color, it's really nice because you can use it to almost adjust some of those lines that you put down that maybe weren't quite in the right place. You can just barge right through those lines with the color, and the color will kind of take the center stage in those situations. Okay, I'm now going to move on to just another color, and what's standing out to me right now is a kind of really soft yellow, kind of pastel yellow on the arm, and it's quite a bit of a bigger patch, so I'm going to mix up quite a bit. I'm still going to keep using this little paintbrush though. It just helps keep everything feel sort of in sync. When you are doing bigger patches of color like this, in the same way that we use the line, it's really nice to see how far you can make this part go. And you might often find, like the line, one area like this can really speak for a lot of the other details in that same area. That's why it's interesting to play with how far you can take that. And this is what I mean about being able to work into the more intimidating areas of the portrait, like the facial features, just with a few harmless bits of color that feel much softer. You can just see that piece of detail and put it in like that. So that's just the side of the nose. And I just feel much more confident adding that in. The pressure just feels off for some reason. And often I found that people feel the same. Okay, I just mixed up a little bit of this dark, deep red color just for a few touches in the hair. You only really need a few little pieces of each color for it to really start to feel vibrant and alive. And as you can kind of see, just by working with this style, first with the lines, and then when you feel like you need something a little bit more to bring in the color, and again, to work very minimally with this approach and slowly and building it up in these stages, you can see how you could leave it somewhere, but you could also take it further. And so I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you enjoy practicing painting portraits with line.
If you'd like to find out more about these masterclasses, go onto our website, skyartsartistoftheyear.tv.